I think beach volleyball needs more personalities, more animation, more fun, more intensity, more rivals, because people love rivalries. And people, like I mentioned earlier, love a hero and a villain. And they like when maybe that hero and villain are not that friendly.
That's the
Yeah.
best.
But all these things, they can't change overnight. Like I said, I'm all for it. Like, you got to control it to a certain level, but I like giving players the freedom to express themselves to a certain point. There's intensity. That's the cool thing about volleyball.
Beach Volleyball Podcast. My name is Mark Burrick, and if you're on our email list and if you're paying attention, normally I don't get nervous for interviews, but this is special. This is cool. This is somebody I've looked up to for a really long time, and somebody that most of the world could, should, and does look up to. You've heard his voice everywhere in volleyball. You've seen his face everywhere in volleyball. He's had enormous success. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't get like nervous or starstruck often, but this is one of those times where I truly am. So hopefully I don't mess this all up and go all fanboy, but I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I'll give a little bit of his background. So he's spent time mentoring students, and he's been a motivational speaker through a nonprofit organization called Getting to Gold. He founded a charity in 1997 called blank first name Day at the Beach. We can't give away his first name yet, but Day at the Beach, which provides urban youth with the opportunity to participate in beach volleyball. He became, this might give it away, he became the first male African American to win a major beach volleyball event when he claimed the 1997 AVP Hermosa Beach Grand Slam. He was the United States' first two-time male beach volleyball Olympian. He has had a distinguished career as a sports broadcaster covering sports such as NBA basketball, Major League Baseball, college basketball, football, beach volleyball for networks on ESPN, NBC, ABC, Fox Sports Net, Universal Sports Network, Pac-12 Networks, Olympic Channel, and Amazon Prime, and he's covered beach volleyball for NBC at the 2016 Olympics. In his first full season, he led the women of Troy, USC, to the 2021 NCAA Championship after 4 years as a volunteer assistant, which we're going to dive into how somebody with this amazing credentials goes into a volunteer assistantship as a coach. And he is an Olympic gold medalist. He's currently in his third season as the head coach of USC Beach Volleyball. Everybody, please welcome and thank for coming on the show, Dain Blanton. Dain Blanton, man, I know we talked a little bit before, and I don't know if you know like how kind of nervous I truly am, but I just really want to thank you for coming and hanging out, and with all that you have going on. And now, like we were talking off camera, a 4.5-year-old and becoming a father and a husband, and then a premier NCAA program, plus being essentially the voice of beach volleyball for 10 years. I can't believe you took the time to come and talk. So thank you. I'll start with that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I've seen you doing your thing, and the whole Better at Beach format is pretty cool. The more you can help players get better, that's kind of what it's all about. And thanks for that introduction, and happy to be here. Hopefully we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a good time. I've got, a number of questions for you, and I do want to, at some point, tell a story that like made you a hero in my eyes as a young player in terms of heckling. But I guess the first question I'll ask that might be a good question for some people who are watching: how do you teach your players to handle heckling, to handle outside, like fans who are chirping, people who don't believe in you, the disbelievers? What would you say to anybody who's not feeling that confident and thinks that they're getting hammered from the outside?
Are you talking like a live heckler at a tournament, kind
Let's
of?
start with that.
Or
Because I specifically saw one situation. I'll tell it right after your answer.
that I was involved with?
Yep.
I mean, it's if you grow up in the environment, you kind of know that beach volleyball it's very clicky and a lot of trash talk, and you kind of get used to it and you know it. If you pick up the game a little later, you might be surprised by being heckled. But I think I grew up in the environment where, I grew up down in Orange County, Laguna Beach, when we would spend the night at the beach to watch the pro events in the morning. And fortunately, I had older brothers, so I was able to go down at a younger age. I was probably 10, and this is, mid 80s. And the first 10, 15 rows were taken if you came in the morning, because people would bring down couches, bury kegs in the ground. I mean, it was a huge like party. And the fans were probably 3 feet from the sidelines. It was ridiculous. Like if you chased a ball off the court, you were going through the crowd. And so to see like St. John Smith and Randy Stoklos and Mike Dodd and Hovland come on the court Saturday morning and play, it was just like these guys were legends. And it was at a time when the sport was so brand new and kind of cutting edge. And, prior to having X Games and all the competition that the sport has now. But watching those guys play, I mean, they would get heckled all the time. And so you would see that as a kid, how they responded. And sometimes things got out of control. Sometimes, there would be kind of wrestling match. I've seen Randy Stoklos go into the crowd and grab somebody. I've seen all sorts of things. So when you see that at a young age, and then you know that it's possible, right?
Mm.
And you've kind of seen someone how they handle it. And so when I don't know what the story is that you have, but once I got to the professional level, you're kind of ready for anything. Of course, if a heckler's an idiot and he's talking, about personal issues or race or something like that, that can kind of derail things, and it's
Mhm.
hard to prepare for something like that. But regular heckling, you love a good heckler. You got to appreciate him as an athlete.
I
And,
agree. I
and
If you're getting
it's
involved, you're showing interest in the sport, right? It's
yeah.
like,
And
at
if
least
they're
someone's
and
paying
some of them are
attention.
funny. Some of them are funny, and, a good heckler, if he makes you laugh heckling you, then he's done a pretty good job. But, I'd love to hear the story that you're referring to.
It was either Manhattan or Hermosa. It had to be one of them. But somebody, you were still playing the event. This was after your gold medal. And I think, pretty sure you were playing with Stafford.
Okay, yeah.
I
That would
think.
have been like I played with Stafford in 2010. That was the last tournament I played in.
So somebody was sitting on the ground yapping the whole time. And he was like, has been and blah, blah. And everybody's looking at this guy like, you're making too much noise for somebody with his credentials. And at some point, I had not seen it to this point yet, or seen a professional do it. I've walked over, I've had partners who walked over and, shut some people up. But he was sitting on the sand. You walked over to the back, over the banners, and you held your ball, and you stood like real tall, like 2 feet from him. And you asked him, "Who are you?" And as he started talking, he goes, "What's your name?" As he started talking, he said, "I don't know it. Nobody here knows it, and nobody cares what you have to say. So keep quiet." And I was like,
Uh,
best
that's a
heckler removal I have ever seen. He chirps like maybe twice more, like a peep, out of him. But he was silenced. He did not expect to be singled out as a
right,
heckler. He's showing up
right.
for the crowd, and you didn't hear from him for the rest of the match, except for one little, like, kind of like last walking away, you know, peep. And I was like, that was the best reaction I've seen, and way to like control and big dog somebody very
Right.
calmly too.
Yeah. It's
I'll
funny when
never
you're
forget.
heckling, like it's a lot easier when you are hidden in the crowd,
Mm.
and it's all just coming from a general area. And then when it's like, oh no, it's just about you now. What do you got? And so that's funny. I didn't remember it that vividly. That's good to hear. I'm glad it worked. I mean, he could have came back with twice the fire. You just never know, right? That's the risk of going into the crowd to talk to, and involving someone in the crowd. But that's funny. I'm glad it worked.
Worked great. Is there a similar message? So when you're coaching at
Mhm.
one of the most prestigious NCAA programs that there is, and storied programs,
Yeah.
when you're teaching players, athletes about dealing with that pressure, dealing with negative fans. I mean, I was brutal to some. I was a big time heckler in college for our women's team. I had their back nonstop, and so to a college or even younger player, how would you tell them to deal with those negative actions, the hecklers, the people who are coming from the outside and chirping on their game?
Yeah, it's hard because every situation is a little different. You want to test your athletes in a practice situation where you're in a controlled environment. I mean, there's a lot of times like I'm reffing a game and I make poor calls intentionally just to get that fire going, that player riled up. So you kind of have to, and it's hard to like literally heckle one of your players, but you want to get them to the point to where they're so focused that you know what, doesn't matter what the crowd's saying, doesn't matter what the ref's saying, doesn't matter that it's windy, that it's raining, that you just teach this. Hey, whatever I'm dealing with out there, probably the opponent's dealing with the same thing. But with heckling, maybe not, right? That you're
Mm,
getting the brunt of something. But it's a matter of being basically okay with your game, being able to focus with the distractions, because you know how it is. There's always distractions. And so every situation's different, but I try to teach the players to keep that focus regardless. I don't say, hey, you're going to experience a heckler, or hey, one day the wind's going to be blowing the way you don't like it, or you just throw different things out. Like maybe there's a great play and all of a sudden the ball rolls on the court, and they lose the point and you
mhm,
got to do it again. And you just have to be just you kind of not a machine, but you have to just keep getting up and going at it and going at it, regardless of what the distraction is. I really like to say the one thing that is inevitable is going to be a challenge or an
mm,
obstacle in your face, right? That is going to happen. I tell that when we're doing anything, when we're traveling, when we're, hey, we could get a delayed flight. Our flight could get canceled. We might show up late. We might, you know what I mean? There's just like, if you're ready, and then when those instances happen, you say to yourself, hey, this is what I was talking about. We don't control what happens to us. We control how we respond to it, right?
mm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, we're stuck in the airport for 4 more hours." Well, we gotta study more, you know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do? You can either, bitch about it and kick rocks or try to be productive about it. So, that's kinda how I approach it, not specific heckling, but distractions.
One of our other guests on our podcast said that we teach and we tell our girls that the obstacles, the things that happen bad, we approach it as this is what is supposed to happen.
Mhm,
You're supposed to get obstacles.
mhm,
It shouldn't treat it as the unexpected or the unfortunate, but it
right,
is the road that we're walking. And this road has rocks and mountains and peaks and valleys. And that's the road that we chose to walk. So embrace it as if every little problem was truly
yeah,
supposed to be there. And I kind
yep.
of like the way that was put.
Yeah, that's very true. That's the one constant is challenges and obstacles, like, they're going to happen, so get ready, and then I think those that manage those situations better usually are victorious and more successful for sure.
Mm. We'll go probably to a conversation you've had a million times, but to your gold medal, right?
Mhm,
I guess in my 20s, all through my 20s, every time I showed up to a tournament, I sensed my body. I felt like, it's this tightness or this looseness or this fatigue. And I would look at it and feel it and be like, it's a little bit less than prime, or it's
mhm,
too tight, or too loose, or oh, my legs are jello. And I think I would let that affect how I played. I would actually change because of how I felt my body. And I wondered for so long, like, man, I bet Jake always just feels perfect. I
mhm,
bet Phil always feels perfect. But then
right,
you get older and you start seeing like Jake had the stomach flu when he won in Seattle and he was just clamping people. Phil was winning with a torn ab. And you're just like, oh, wait, these guys aren't feeling perfect
yeah,
all the time. They're managing all of these and maybe they're just doing it better or mentally better. So when you're coming up and then crushing the world, how did you approach going into a match with different body feels, or was that ever even something that entered your mind?
No, absolutely. Like that's one of the most important lessons an athlete can learn as they're getting better and progressing in their career, that there's no perfect there's no perfect feeling usually. I mean, there's times when you feel really good and you're ready to go, but a lot of times you got little kinks, your neck's tight, or maybe you actually have an injury, or you slept wrong, or you didn't eat well, or you ate something bad and you're not feeling well. I mean, I've played in finals where I've thrown up before, just feeling sick. But I think, like you said, you eventually learned, no, not me, not the next person shows up every day and it's perfect. It's like you learn to manage the game that you show up with on that day, right?
Mm,
It's like if you golf, sometimes you go out and you start hitting balls and every ball's going out to the right, right? At a certain point, you realize, I'm not going to fix this. So maybe I'm going to start aiming a little more to the left. Do you see what I mean? So that the
okay, yeah.
ball, so the ball ends up in the fairway, right? You can either fight it or you can work with it, right?
That's an
And
interesting when I thought about maybe your response to this, I was thinking like, don't let that feeling change your game. Just do whatever you practiced and stick with that. But you're saying feel what you have, feel
yeah.
what it is and adjust to that in the moment. Is that kind
Yeah,
of
I
your
mean, because
advice?
think about it, for a while, you're gonna be fighting, like, you've trained, right? You've gotten to this point. You're not gonna train yourself in the next 10 minutes, right?
Mm,
So you're getting this there's some reason, whether something's not firing, that the ball's going a certain direction. You can continue to fight that, and throughout your whole round of golf and everything keeps going in the trees to the right, or you can say, "Oh, this is the kind of game that I'm working with today." Like, you might show up and you can't bury the ball at 90%. Your toughest hits 80, 70% for some
felt
reason,
that today. Yeah.
right? So you maybe start using a little more shots, right? Maybe use that hit when the space is open, but maybe you're not going to have that fast lightning arm swing that's going to beat the block every time. And then you got to kind of adjust that game. But I think feeling it and working with it rather than completely fighting it, like, this isn't what I do. I know what I normally do. I got to get back to that. And then you have this internal, feeling. It's like a jump serve, right? Some people have great jump serves, but some days they're just not on.
Mm,
So they have to make a decision. Do I keep ripping it into the net or out of bounds, whatever? Or do I manage this? Maybe I go to my float serve? Maybe I go to the short deep? It's like in basketball. If you're a shooter, and you're in a slump, you kind of keep shooting out of that slump, right? It's
that seems to me like two different answers. Where like you'd say like keep shooting Kobe. Like we
well,
know
right.
that eventually you're gonna make it.
Right. I mean, if you're a shooter, that's what you do. But I'm
Mhm.
talking when you're dealing with your whole game, right? Your whole game. If my shot's dead off, I'm going to start driving to the hoop a little more.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I completely put the shot away. It means that, hey, I'm aware that I'm a little off and maybe I could turn up the dial on some other stuff that maybe I don't normally do,
mm,
until, after this match or after this tournament, I go back to try to get to a situation where that doesn't happen again, right? You never want to show up and you don't have your whole toolbox. I think you gotta feel it. You have to listen to your body. You gotta feel it because there's enough conflicts out there, right? You're trying to win something and the people on the other side are trying to get that same prize. So recognize where you're at, recognize what you have that day. Of course, you want to use your best tools, but if something's not working, you can go down swinging. It's like, say I'm a great hitter and I play 90% of the teams and I'm just beating them, the blocks late. And then I get to the finals and I'm playing, Anders Mole,
Lol.
right? Or like a Phil, and it's just like boom, 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 boom. They're blocking you off the court. I've seen guys like, who are the Netherlands team, Brouwer, is it?
Mhm. Houston and Brower, yeah.
I used to commentate a lot of the international game, and this guy's a hitter. He's going to hit, he's going to win hitting, he's going to lose hitting. And that's an attitude. But like sometimes I'm like, I would go to him in between because I'm friends with him, and I would say, like, why don't you just shoot some balls? Just shoot a
Yeah.
few. I mean, he was like 95% hit and he would just keep on swinging. So, can you fault that? No, but he would have probably won a lot more matches, I think, because beach, you can't be one dimensional.
Mm,
I mean, we don't know anybody, right, who fully shoots all the time, unless you're old and that's all you can do.
yeah, yeah.
But someone at the top of their game has a power shot, they have finesse shots, and they have to go back and forth. If they do one thing, it's eventually going to catch up to them.
You
So,
don't think there's space for somebody to be a full hitter or a full shooter? I don't think there's a space for a full shooter. I do think that in the game there's space for full hitters,
well, yeah,
and then
I
just
mean,
smart decisions when you just don't have that set.
you're saying just to bring it all the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Eric and I, in transition, we would swing almost every time, unless I saw a complete open shot.
Mm,
Like we were gonna make you. I think the biggest thing is players don't get is you need to make the opposition earn their points, right? If we didn't, and Eric and I didn't care. Like if you blocked us, good for you. If you dug us and converted, well, good for you. But we're not giving you anything less than that.
mm,
We're going to make you score. We're not going to hit the ball out of bounds. We're going to try, especially on a transition play, we're going to bring it. So in the transition game, I always like to swing. I love to swing.
wow.
Yeah, I love because most people don't. Because in transition, you've just usually made another play. You've made
Mhm.
a dig, you've ran down a shot. The body's telling you not to turn it up even another notch. If you watch the majority of people, when they dig a ball or transition, it's usually a shot,
Right.
unless everything's perfect. So if you change that paradigm and just train yourself to hit when your body's saying no, right? When your body's saying, oh, you just made a great dig, and now you're going to finesse it. I think it puts you in a certain situation. The next type of coach might have a different thought. But to answer your question, I don't think, well, like Brouwer, for instance, on the Netherlands, he's had a great career. So I wouldn't say he is unsuccessful because he hits all the time. I'm just saying I think he would have won more with more of an array of shots, like being aware when he's playing the Moles and the Dahlhausers and the Jake Gibbs or the Allisons, like where this huge block up, you got to be. I love it though. I mean, I love when someone brings it every time, but I think to be really successful, I mean, look at Phil. He buries the ball sometimes he shoots it.
Mm,
I always like to see the array, but I don't think any player is better doing one thing. I think you need that combination of offense to reach your full potential. I think you can still be successful, win some tournaments, and be great, but could you be a little bit better if you were smarter
sure.
uh, at times? So I don't know if that all
Yeah,
makes
because we were talking to Russell Brock from LSU, and
uh
we talked about what's the goal of transition offense, and it's very opposite. I'd say
mhm,
to what you say. Like, goal of transition offense is to then not necessarily get a kill, but return the difficulty until you find a position. So instead of going and swinging on a very difficult set or going for low percentage swings hard when
mhm,
you're not in an ideal situation, errors are more likely to happen. For me specifically, when I worked with Jordan Chang from USA Volleyball, we looked at my transition game, and my transition numbers were miserable compared to my first ball side out numbers.
mhm,
And I had to make a change there. I had to stop getting blocked and stop making hitting errors in those very difficult situations. That was like a 15 to 20% jump in my hitting percentage right there.
mhm.
So it's fun to see different mentalities on it where you're said just bring it, bring it, bring it. But in the same breath, you're also saying, hey, you still need to have multiple tools.
Yeah, I mean, if you see something, if you see the open shot, you go for it. But like you said, sometimes you get blocked, sometimes you make hitting errors, right?
Mm,
Those are two totally different things. I'm not talking about reckless swinging and having the error come into play. This is you're hitting the ball, it's in the court. They're either making a play by stuffing you or they're digging you. You know
mm,
what I mean? And in a transition game when I was playing, we wanted to make you earn that point.
mm,
Like, and we were okay with it. We were okay, like, if you dropped into my angle and you stuffed that ball, like, okay, good for you. You made a play. But the worst thing is to err, like to hit that ball out of bounds, to hit
Period.
that ball
Yeah.
into the net. So I mean, I'm talking about transition where you have a pretty high percentage of positioning,
Mhm.
and a lot of times, if you watch athletes at any level, even when everything is on point, the ball's been dug to the right spot, the set's in the right spot, you had enough time to get there, 85% of the people are probably still shooting. I'd have to do a study to break it down, but
Sure.
which is, it's like you said, different philosophies for sure. There's different philosophies. But when Eric and I played, we weren't the biggest guys. We weren't the tallest blockers. We were
Oh, you
split
were
blocking.
physical.
Yeah, we were just physical.
You
We
can
were gonna
bomb.
beat you in the weight room, and we were gonna beat you in our stamina, and the longer this match went on, the less likely it is for you to win it.
Mm.
But we weren't gonna completely dominate you in anything but hustle. You know what I mean? And you
Mhm.
could control that. And, it was a different game that we played in the last game of big court, and we played in the last game of regular
The last game.
yeah,
So
because
that
in
gold medal match was the last international match
yeah.
at Big Co Wow.
Well, the court they had already implemented they were testing it, they called it, the let rule, which
Okay.
they just kinda put into play. It was already in play in the Olympics, and then the court size shrunk that next year to 8 by 8 meters, which was considerable, right? 3 feet on each end line and a foot and a half on each sideline, and the rally score was implemented.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was it. That's if
Did
you
you
go
hate
back
that? Did you hate that switch, or did you kind of take it in stride as like,
yeah.
"Alright, they're changing it, let's rock from here."
At the time, it was tough. Change is always hard, right? And you
Mm,
don't know if it's gonna be good or bad. I think they thought, the powers that be at the international level, they thought if they shrunk the court, there would be more rallies. That was the thinking of it, like, less space, so, it's like if you put a ping pong ball in a
right,
a
right, yeah.
smaller space, it's pinging around faster. What I think happened was the you took a lot of the shooting more of the shooting out of it because people were like, I got to get the ball down quicker because the defenders are running down all the shots. It's a
See, that,
shorter.
like, blows my mind because every when you go on, like, Instagram or, Lee's highlights on YouTube or Lee's classics, all I see from those games is people bombing on big
Mhm.
court, and I'm like, "You guys had a football field to shoot into,"
Right,
but everybody's just rocking balls, and
yeah.
I didn't understand how there became it seemed like from, like, highlights, it seemed like there was more swinging when there was an open court, or when there was a bigger court than there was in a smaller court. Did you agree with that, or is it just the highlight selection that made it more
No.
exciting?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I think their idea was the fact that you were going to just get the ball played more in the smaller court. But I don't really know the effect it had. I just know that it was easier to play defense. It was easier to receive a jump serve. A lot of these players that like I remember back in the day, Brian Lewis had a crazy jump serve. Adam Johnson, some of these guys just rip jump serves, and it changed. But you know what? The players adjusted, right? You still have players that are bombing jump serves and that are really great at it. So you always got to tinker around with a sport to find out it to let it evolve. It's like with basketball with the 3-point shot. It's like at first people were like, "This is lame," but
Mm,
now with Steph
Steph takes
Curry and
over the
what,
world.
yeah, that's all kids are doing, and it
Mhm.
changes and it trickles all the way down. So I don't mind. I mean, at the time, I'm sure I was like, these rules are kind of crazy. I'm not a huge fan of rally scoring. I understand it and why it can kind of control. But if you chart a regular game right now and to 21, sometimes the score is 2-1 based on old scoring. So it's hard to score 15.
Wow. Oh,
Do
yeah,
you see what I'm
because it's
saying?
side out, side out, side out, side out. So, like,
Yeah.
in a set that ends in rally scoring would still be the
Yeah.
score 2-1. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just played
Think
Pottstown this weekend, and you're playing for 45 minutes, and it's like the score is 2-3, and it's been 45
right,
minutes.
right. I
Like,
mean, it's not common, but it could be, it could be 4-3. And
mhm.
then you play another set and now it's 11-9, technically, you know what I mean?
Right.
If you
Yeah.
were scoring it when people scored when they have a serve. I hate when people say real points because, like, that's assuming there's fake points, right?
Yeah.
There's old school scoring when you had to serve, and there's rally scoring on point per play. But, for the most part, the matches 2 out of 3 to 21 and the third to 15 end up being about the same as what old school scoring would be. But it's one of those things, like, it's back and forth, then you kind of start to get engaged at like 18 all as a fan.
Yep. I agree.
You're like,
It's kind
okay,
of why I love King of the Court right now, because
yeah,
it's like nonstop action.
right.
I got to play in one, but then once I got knocked out, I was watching it. I was like, this is so much fun. How much you
Yeah.
have to constantly pay attention.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the AVPs now, they got rid of the freeze. I thought the freeze was intriguing and it made it very interesting. Now, you're down by 5, rally score.
It's
Most likely,
over.
you're not coming back.
Hmm.
You can, but you're probably not. I would have liked to see the freeze implemented like internationally, and so you're not playing different formats. But it is kind of tricky as a spectator, unless you're
Hmm.
volleyball fan, and you want to make it simple as possible, right? And I don't think your lay fan gets the double elimination either.
Right.
So you
Do
want to
you
make it fan friendly.
kind of a question that leads in, or that led into, is the amount of times that I've heard you say, and in this format, we play 2 sets to 21 with a third and deciding set to 15. And it's not me being mad at you. It's always me going, why do we still have to explain like the basics to, yes, we need a bigger ground base for fans. We need to like encourage more people to show up. But how much are we catering nonstop to bringing more people into the sport
Mhm,
versus the fans who are already engaged? You never hear in a football game like,
mhm,
and by the way, there are 4 quarters today
mhm,
and it's
mhm.
15 minutes per quarter. Like there's not a whole lot of explaining to that, or explanation of the rules. So do you think that it's because you're forefront of that? And
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you took that upon yourself to always be explaining to the newbies what's happening, or do you have producers that say, hey man, we got to talk about this, make sure that you include this during the broadcast so that people aren't confused or lost?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the way you look at broadcasting a volleyball event is you want to include the newbie, the newcomer, right? That
Right.
has never seen it before, but you don't want to talk down to the expert or dumb it down. So you kind of want to walk this kind of fine line in the middle where the expert, if you say something like that, the expert's kind of like, yeah, of course, whatever. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But you don't want to annoy them, but the person that just changed the channel is like, "Oh, I didn't know that." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Why don't we do that in tennis? Or I mean, there are times I'm watching tennis and I'm like, "Is this 2 out of 3 or is this 3 out of 5?" Because I don't know.
Right, and the tie break always needs to be explained still. And I played growing up, and I'm like, wait,
Right.
you start on the right side, and then you move left, right. And
Yeah. So but football, like, such a tradition, right? It's been going forever. It's very mainstream. You're talking anytime you're dealing with the big 3, MLB, NBA, NFL, it's pretty much is what it is, right? Like, if you don't know, you gotta go get up to speed.
Hmm.
Our sport, although it's been around for a while, doesn't have the tradition, doesn't have the mainstream access and exposure. And so a lot of times, and you've heard it before, you're getting this huge pop during the Olympics because people have never seen it before. Oh my
Number
gosh,
one, we're always the number one sport on the
right.
Olympics.
But everyone's like, oh, what, I always see it in the Olympics, but, because it's hard to chase
Mm.
because it's not consistent. I could go find out when the Masters is right now for 2023. I bet we could go on Google and find out right now, right?
Mm.
You could find out when the US Open of golf is. You could find out where the US Open of tennis is, what weekend, when it's playing, when the first round starts. Could you go do that for volleyball?
You can only know the major amateur tournaments, which is interesting. Like the same weekend, right? Has
Right,
always
right,
been the Pottstown, Wapaka,
right. But
Seaside.
but
Like,
great. Those aren't being televised on a national level. The
right.
pros, the top level, Do you think you could find out a date of when
No,
Manhattan Beach is next year?
no. I mean, we're in February this year, and I'm just like, I can't plan our 7-day camps
Yeah,
because all of our
you can,
coaches are going to be at an AVP event. So
right.
I'm like, now we're waiting on that.
So that's my point, right? And,
Mm,
like, the tradition, and because probably it was 15 years ago, or they started tinkering with dates, right? Like, remember when I talked about the Laguna Open that I'd spend the night to go see because you
yeah.
had to get good it was the weekend after I got out of school every week. It was the last week in June weekend every year.
Mm,
Like, I can tell you that right now. So I don't need marketing, I don't need to see a billboard, I don't need to see anything. And Manhattan was the same weekend, and Clearwater, and, like, they had, the Jose Cuervo Triple Crown, Santa Cruz, and these
yeah.
things would take place the same year, every year. And then someone got cute with, "Oh, Manhattan's so big, let's move the weekend and we'll put someone else there." And then all of a
Mm,
sudden you start losing the audience in a sense. So
yeah.
we don't have that tradition, right? I can't tell you the weekend, except for maybe Chicago, right? Chicago's always that
Yes,
Labor Day week,
that was in the back of my mind the whole
right?
time. Yep.
And the only way we know that is, like, over the years, we've been it's just been embedded, and it stayed there, and it stayed there, and it stayed there. That's the only tournament I can think of. So, to wrap this up, what I'm saying is the consistency has never been there. And so
Mm,
you're constantly getting this new audience who's seen it for the first time, and then they're gone. I mean, how many people say, "Hey, Dan, oh my God, I saw the national championships." It's because we were on for college volleyball. It's because we're on ESPN.
mhm.
Everybody turns on ESPN.
Yeah.
Everybody does. By them seeing it, some of them are like, still like, I don't know what was there was 5 courts going on. I don't really know what was going on, but it was cool, So I think as a broadcaster, you're always getting that new person that's just flipping the dials, and then you're getting that expert as well. Like, if I just turn the channel and hear someone say a real point,
Yeah.
it's silly. Right?
Yep.
Whenever I'm broadcasting with someone and they say it, I try to call them out on it. Like, what does that mean? Because, right, it implies
Right.
there's a fake point
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
point
Or a
that's less.
baby point, like from side out drills or something.
Yeah. And so I think you're trying to educate as a broadcaster, but you're not trying to irritate the veteran, or, the expert. But that's a valid point. Why don't we talk about format when tennis is being played? Well, it's been around 100 years, and most people kind of know it and just accept it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
Why is
Oh,
it
my
feel
summers, like early summers, early and late summer for me was
Mhm,
always waking up to Wimbledon. My dad would turn on Wimbledon and like I would sleep on the living room and I would hear that popping of the tennis ball because he wouldn't put it loud, but just so he
mhm,
could hear it. And that was always beginning of summer to me. And then right
mhm.
before school, always US Open. So like 2 parts of summer, I knew what summer was beginning or ending
Yeah.
because it was that popping of the tennis ball from my TV. And yeah, we just kind of don't have those dates. Do you,
Yeah, that consistency is everything, and I think it's hard to do. That's why it hasn't been done again.
mm,
It's hard to get people to commit, like, that far out, and sponsors, and the stability has been a bit erratic, for the
yeah.
sport. And it's just, I would love everyone, I think, would love to know where the venue is, know
Right.
where it's going to be on that weekend, and so you get that tradition. That's when you truly can gain momentum. And I hope that's the direction that
Yeah.
the powers that be push the sport, because otherwise it's just almost this renewal, and this pop every Olympic cycle. And
Mhm.
it's so much more than that. As you said, it's such a highly rated Olympic sport. Why isn't it in the forefront on every summer, the whole
Yeah.
summer? Because the summer is a quiet time for sports, right? You got baseball going on, but when basketball ends and
Mhm.
there's no football, and it's kind of golf and tennis or here and there. But yeah, we could talk about it for all day long, but consistency is huge. But as a TV broadcaster, I'm trying to walk that middle line.
Sure.
And hopefully you get a new fan here. And hopefully while you're getting that new fan, you're not irritating the expert too much. And there's going to be times when the new fan doesn't really understand stuff, but
Mm,
that's just the way it is. But that's kind of the thinking behind it.
yeah. So every now and then we'll release on YouTube. We do it for our online members, but we do like big video analysis of championship matches where we go really deep with our members into actual strategy, tactics, like
Mhm.
different versions of 3 blocks, different versions of 4 blocks, and separating defenders and separating blockers. And the
Mhm.
junkies love it. They dive so into it. But when you look on YouTube, that's where we got our hardcore fans. But the views on YouTube are like 900 views because it doesn't appeal to the bigger base that doesn't quite get all the details yet. There's
Uh,
always that huge base that doesn't dive that far into the game, but still enjoys
mhm.
watching it. And I
Right.
guess that's the stuff where you have to find that line of, as an announcer, as a commentator, how do I appeal to the most, to the biggest audience that's now watching on television or Amazon Prime or Fox? So that's got to be a tough line to walk. But I have a kind of a quote from Sean Rosenthal, and I wonder if you'd comment on it or see it for yourself. Sean said that his biggest disappointment was that he hasn't left the sport better for the current young 20-year-olds, better than he found it,
Mm,
like better than when he came in. And
yeah.
he looked at that as, not necessarily a failure, but something that he was sad about in
Mhm.
leaving the sport. Do you feel that way about beach volleyball right now, that it's not where it could or should be, or that it's sad? And are there any thoughts that you haven't shared publicly about what you think would actually work? Because everybody on social media talks like, well, why don't they do this? Why don't they do this? And they're not behind they're not behind enemy lines, like talking to cities and trying to handle
Yeah.
permits in New York City and all those logistics. So everybody's got ideas without actually stepping up and taking it. But
Mhm.
do you think the sport's in a good place right now, in a positive place? And do you think that there's something that people are definitely missing that would pop the sport in your mind?
Well, first to answer, I don't think the sport's where it should be or could be based on my experience. You gotta understand, I won my first event in 1997, lit $60,000 in that tournament, my first win, 60,000. The purse was $350,000. So, I got a
Wow.
check on next Thursday for $30,000. So, to look at the tour now, of course, I'm gonna tell you it's nowhere near. At that time, we were thinking, okay, there's gonna be 10 years, we're gonna be playing in $500,000 events. The winner's gonna be splitting 100K, and it's just gonna go from there. So there's been so many ups and downs with the, kind of what we talked about, consistency and keeping your fan base and whatnot. So it's been a challenge. And now Bally's has taken over it, the AVP. It's a new beginning. I don't know, I'm optimistic that they'll do as much as they can for the sport, but it's hard because in that quote that's interesting by Sean Rosenthal, I always wanted to leave the sport in a better place than it was, right?
Mhm.
And it's hard for a player, right? As a player, it's hard to control those things. You got to be you. You get, whether some players have more personality, some don't, but it's got to be managed correctly. And the powers that be, the owners of the tour, need to always be pushing. I think Donald Sun did a fantastic job, pushing as much as he could, but there's
Do you think
just
he missed anywhere? Did you think there was an obvious place where it's like, if whether it was Donald or whether Bally's, if they do this in your mind, would this be a better move or something that people are missing? Like the discussion of like, okay, paid tickets, sponsorships, where we're putting ourselves on TV. I think the schedule thing is something that I've never heard before and makes complete sense. Like, why can't we plan out tournaments a year in advance so people know where to go and everyone can plan around that? But is there anything that has been that people missed that you're like, man, this is how it should be, and that would fix things?
gosh, there's so many different things.
Are you
It's
being politically nice right now, or are you genuinely thinking?
No, I'm just trying to think of I had a thought in my mind that it came in and went out, but because there's so many different things and it's easy to like second guess what's been done
Mm,
in a sense, but you just I don't know if the players, I think maybe you got to care about the players, right? As a fan, right? Like when I watch sports, it's about the players. It used to be all about the teams for me. Now I kind of really resonate to a player or not, right?
mm,
It's like when Tiger was golfing, most people were big Tiger fans, but if you were the anti-Tiger fan, you liked Phil, right?
sure.
And you either you kind of need that hero and the villain for your story, whatever, whoever that is. It was fun to see like Jake and Phil Dahlhauser go at it for a while. But in my era, I was watching like St. John Smith and Randy Stokely
Mm,
against Mike Dodd and Tim Hovland, and you just have to care on that level. So I don't think it's something that the organizations have done, but players' personalities need to be showcased. I think one of the biggest things, if I'd point to one thing that the organizations could do better, whoever the owner is, it's getting local promoters
mm,
and getting a vested interest in that city. So there was a time where we had that, but you can't run 16, 20 events just as from LA or wherever.
right.
It's hard when you don't have locals in the
Mhm.
market. And I don't know exactly how that looks as a business, but I mean, like golf for like the Genesis Open, Tiger owns that in Los Angeles. They spend a whole year putting that together.
Mm,
The Genesis LA Open that's at the Riviera Country Club. That's organized all year, for
right,
that one event. And as soon as it ends, they start focusing on the next year. That, of course, it's a PGA event, right?
right.
But it's run by a local promotion. Most
Yeah,
tournaments
like
are like,
here in Redondo, like the Beach Life Festival, the music festival has been
yeah,
promoted nonstop across like all of my social media. The Beach Life Festival with like the musicians, and that was 7, 8 months out,
right.
and
Well,
I
because
haven't seen
that's
a
all they're doing.
single AVP ad
Right.
for
But
like
you
when
know what I
promotes
mean?
are
But
needed.
that's all
Yeah.
they're doing. So
Mm,
imagine if you were, you went to Austin and you worked with a group in Austin and they're like, we're going to get the best venue. We're going to lock this venue down for X amount of years. We're going to promote it here. We're boots on the ground, right?
mhm.
'Cause you know how it is. It's one thing to be virtual and most things can be done virtually, but if you're local, you're going to do business with a local, that nuts and bolts is going to, sure, the infrastructure can come from the bigger overseeing, like
Yeah.
the AVP or the PGA or whatever. But the actual tournament, the local market has to be vested in it.
Mm,
Otherwise, you're just showing up and packing up and going
right.
until the next time around. So, if I were to point to one thing, it would be involving the local markets a little bit more so they had a vested interest
Yeah.
in making this the best event because it's hard to have a menu of 16 to 20 events and make every one of them great.
Right. Yeah, I think somebody was saying recently they're like when we were in Belmar, New Jersey, signs everywhere.
Mhm,
Every club was contacted. Every juniors club, indoor and everything, was like coaches were saying, "Hey, we got to go to that. Hey, we got to go to that." And in my mind, that should be, the AVP should personally contact every club director in the tri-state area from any tournament and be like, this is when we're going to be here. As soon as they release that date, those
mhm,
emails and contacts to at least the club directors should go
mhm,
out, get the kids there. And then once you have that, then like, hey, nonstop businesses. But the regional contact for businesses, I think, yes, because I don't know, which is crazy, but I don't know the structure of the AVP personnel right now. And
mhm,
other than like Josh and Jeff, who's reaching out to
mhm.
everybody, to all these businesses and having phone calls and saying, this is where we're going to be. Are you going to be there? Are you going to bring your business there?
That's almost proving my point.
Mm,
You need either someone at that high level, and I'm sure there is someone coordinating that
hmm.
effort, but then you need that individual effort in each market.
Right. Yeah.
And that may exist to a certain extent. We're just speculating right now on how we see it from the outside and the nuts and bolts and the daily activities and personnel and the whole hierarchy of the business model. I'm not sure of,
Mm,
as you're probably not sure of, but just from the history of what I've dealt with, I know when there's local promotion, like I used to go fly into markets and deal with a local promoter. They were like, hey, we got to go to this bar and sign autographs. And then we go over here. And that, like, almost kind of boots on the ground
mm,
philosophy really kind of turned up the interest in the market. So, There's so many different angles. I can't wait to see what Bally's does. I think it's a fresh start. It's a huge company that's been successful for a long time. And so I hope it gets to that level. But you can imagine, you asked me, is the sport where I thought it would be or should be? When I tell you those numbers about 1997, it's probably mind boggling to you. That was,
Disheartening.
yeah. And, in those days, they were a different time, but there was a lot of guys making 250K of sponsor.
Before stepping on the court, right?
Yeah, yeah, and more than that, guys like, Ken Steffes I remember he had Hawaiian Tropics, he was with Oakley, he was with Fila, you name it, and just making a lot of money.
Were
And
guys in that era better at reaching out? Or were more
what
companies just pouring themselves into beach volleyball because it was so cool and it was like a
Yeah,
sport where guys had their shirts off?
yeah,
So that was wild.
I think it was more like, "Whoa, what is this? This is pretty cool." It hadn't been bottled yet, right?
Okay.
Like I told you, there was in the '80s, there was no grandstands.
Mm.
You've probably seen some of the old pictures of Manhattan or Laguna. It's just people,
Mhm.
and you can barely see the court because it's not like it was sloped, it was flat. But it was, I think that cool factor, that cutting edge was on a higher level.
Mm.
And so if in the 90s you could be like, "Oh my gosh, we got to hit that demographic." And remember, this is before social media as well. So a company didn't have the same metrics,
Mhm.
right? So you're going to dump, things weren't counted as much either, right? Let's dump $100,000 into this. Now you can be like, "Oh, you put $100,000, you're getting X amount of views,
Yep.
or the metrics
And
are
then you
all
need this
there."
many views to get this many
Yeah,
buyers, and but yeah.
yeah, and it's just back in the day, you kind of more spitball it, right? Like, "Oh my gosh, that's our demographic, we gotta get a piece of that, let's."
Yeah.
Oh, and who's on center court every day? That guy? Let's sign him. What do we gotta sign him for? Doesn't matter, let's get him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that's changed. So, it's a fascinating conversation. But yeah, it would be nice to get those sponsorship levels back to that level, and it would be nice to get the prize money at a higher level so more people could support themselves as players. And we knew even after 2000, Eric and I, because the tour was kind of up and down, like, hey, we got to play international and we got to play on the AVP if we're gonna be pros and
Right.
make enough money. And then there was a handful of teams, right? The top 2, 3 teams that could do that,
Mhm.
and then the other ones had to kind of figure it out. It would be, it'd be so cool. You watch the kind of fight that's going on with the PGA right now. We've seen that
Wild,
multiple
yeah.
times, right? In beach volleyball at a micro level with none of the money, right?
Right. Like,
So,
"We're gonna give you a whopping
yeah,
$2,000 to play
yeah.
this tournament," and it's like,
So to see these
that's
guys like, making these appearance fees, and now I think it's $4 million prize money for these live events, it's going to put the PGA in check
mhm.
in terms of watch how many more benefits the players get. Because competition's always good at the end of the day, right? Someone's
Yes.
pushing the envelope, the players usually win.
Do you think the
So
P1440 was good competitively for the AVP? Because, I feel like the AVP, Association of Volleyball Professionals, it was
mhm, yeah,
a union of players that were like, "Hey, this stuff is too far out of our hands." And currently, there is, in my mind, no power to the players. There's no union, even though like that's what it was built on. But
mhm,
we're not having any say. We get told in meetings
right.
what's happening and ask for our input, but it's not like there's control and hasn't been. So I feel like we're a lot weaker than guys from your era in terms of steering our own sport. And right now, like the most powerful voices are not even the strongest players. They're the ones who are having the most social media influence.
Right. So, I mean, let me answer the P1440 question. It was interesting, right? I think that 1440 is still going. They're still got
Mhm.
their, and I think when they first got out there, they weren't sure of what direction. Are they going to be a tour? Are they going to be a
Health, music.
lifestyle?
Yeah,
Health.
yeah.
And I think they were. That's how you start a company, and I think Carrie and her team were trying to figure out what direction it was going in. It's hard to say, was it good or was it bad? It's like a different level than what we're talking about golf. Golf, we're talking about an entire tour started, and I
Mm.
know P1440 tried to put on a tour, and it's hard. It's hard
Mhm.
because even at the volleyball level, people want to see the best play, right?
Yeah.
And if the best aren't all there, it can, and when it gets divisive, it's hard. But I think any organization that's promoting volleyball, that's pushing, is a good thing,
Yeah.
right? And if you're good enough, people are going to play
Mhm.
on your format. That's just the way it is.
And it was good for a lot of players. I mean, a lot of players like got earned more prize money that year than any surrounding years, or those 2 years, than any surrounding years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't terrible, and it worked out for people, and people were flying in international. But I think you're right. There was excitement and a lot of directions that people were looking at, like any company, like, okay, and at some point, hey, what are we doing the best? What can we do the best and the easiest with the most efficiency? And they dialed back down.
I was looking in your chat. It says, "How about having a good product to watch? Where's the showmanship, personalities? Why are you trying to promote an expensive traveling tour of boring technical volleyball that no one's interested in seeing?"
To
That's
me,
interesting.
I agree, because that was one of my questions that I was gonna ask you going into that. Like, I have referees and sportsmanship, and I know that you're coaching for USC and you're a commentator, but you're supposed to be, color commentator, so you're supposed to add some flavor. But seeing everybody hey, if you stare somebody down, that's a yellow card.
Uh,
Like,
Yeah, I think it's silly. I mean, anything like that is silly. I think what the NBA is doing is silly. Like the NBA,
what do you
they
mean?
don't know. Well, they don't know what they're calling. Like, they let Draymond Green get away with a lot more than the next person. Then,
Mhm.
two texts and you're out. It used to be more fun in terms of letting things, and I think across the board, sports have kind of buckled down on things a little too much. That if
You think it's too much? I think it's too much.
Yeah, yeah, I
Like,
think it's way too
hockey
much.
is the
I
only
wanna
people that get
see
away with this. That, like, we brought fist fighting back into into hockey, in the early 2000s, because it's more fun.
well,
I don't know.
that's yeah, the hockey's let's leave hockey in its own
Sure,
corner, right?
sure.
Because it's almost like a whole 'nother part of the sport, the fighting. But on regular sports, I think that we've put out the fire, right? You yell through the net and like, "Hey, here's the yellow. We're gonna have you do that again. You got a red card." It's like you haven't done anything. Like, let me be free. Let me show personality. I think we've extinguished it too much from top down, like from the authorities, from the referees. Hey, the referees can control it, or if referees have too much of an ego and you say something to them and they're pulling the card too quick, and then
I
eventually you're like,
1000% agree with you.
yeah, you're kind of like, I'm not going to give this game away because I'm going to get carded, so let me just keep it to myself, and then that just kind of dumbs down the emotions.
Yeah,
uh,
just when the fans are getting fired up. Like,
yeah,
when
I
you see
love.
Kelly Clays stare somebody down for a second and the audience fires up for that, and
Yeah,
then, like, the ref, throws her a yellow card because it's too aggressive.
yeah,
Huh?
yeah. But it's the hard thing is they're being told that they're
Like
superior,
who?
because referees, they have meetings too, you know what I mean? And above the referees are the organizations. They have, say of, hey, what is this going to be like? What do we want to, and it's just, things evolve, and it's like the NBA 20 years ago was a lot more physical, right? You
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
could, you could take a guy out, but I don't promote that, right? And I get that. You got to protect players. They're making 40, 50 million a year. You can't have someone undercutting them. And
Mm.
but just the little stuff, the taunting, like the taunting calls, I mean, give me a break. Taunting in football or in basketball, it's like, I think that's kind of laughable, but I think it takes some personality away. I think it pulls the athlete back. So, based on that question, and or comment, we need. I think beach volleyball needs more personalities, more animation, more fun, more intensity, more rivals. Because if it's, there's people love rivalries, and people, like I mentioned earlier, love a hero and a villain. And they like when maybe that hero and villain are not that friendly, and that all means something. Like, just look at the Magic Bird stuff back in the day,
Yeah.
and Michael Jordan and whoever he
Reggie
played.
Miller and Spike Lee just
Yeah,
jawing it up, in
yeah,
Madison Square Garden. That's the
yeah. I
best.
don't think they liked each other, and it was fun to see them express it.
Yeah.
So, that's another angle but all these things, they can't change overnight. It's kind of
We
has
need
to be a concerted
Dana White
effort.
to head up the referee association for a while.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
So we talk about that at the professional level. Are you also, as the head coach of USC, are you also okay with that at the NCAA level, or should that be curbed, or should professional and college sports be similar in terms of what they allow? A little bit more chippiness, I think, is fine. Yeah, don't let people throw hands under the net, but staring somebody down and talking between points, you're still going to blow the whistle when the serve starts.
Like I said, I'm all for it. Like, you gotta control it to a certain level, but I like giving players the freedom to express themselves to a certain point. If you're using profanity or you're being personal and, but like
Yeah, to the point
a
where you can't
Sarah,
televise it.
a
Yeah.
Sarah Pavin stare down is exciting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And there's intensity. That's the cool thing about volleyball. You're on opposite sides of the net.
Hmm.
So you have a barrier in between. There's no contact. And so, yeah, I think even at a collegiate level, you can I don't mind it. I don't go out and promote it, and say, "Hey, you guys get out there, get in their face," or anything, but if you're feeling good, if you just knock someone down on a joust and you look at them and they're on the ground, like, that's volleyball. That's why we started playing the sport. It's kind of fun, it's chippy. So I promote that at all levels.
So would you say that sport then is and should be a psychological battle and a physical skill battle? Or should it be, to me, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm sure I'll get messages about this, but
Mhm.
like, I enjoy the psychological part of it, of trying to take the upper hand psychologically, or feeling, or figuring out how you can mentally get somebody off of their technical skill. I think that's a cool part of sport, and that it should be the complete battlefield. Whereas some people are like, let your game talk for itself. Part of that game, in my mind, should be that psychological and social aspect of it. But do you feel a certain way towards that? Or do you think that skills should always be rated against skills, and the mind, the mental, the psychological, and the social should not be a part of the game? And I mean, you've kind of answered it in some way, but
No, I mean, to answer your question, I think it's all the above needs to be at play.
mm,
I think it's not just skill. It's not just who's the better player. There's a lot of gamesmanship goes into it. And I think every little thing you do on the court is can affect your opponent. You know what I mean? Your opponent asks for the ball or something, and you either toss them the ball or you ignore
roll
them.
it 2 feet in front of the net so they have to go and get it.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it's just fun. Sports are fun. And I think to answer your question, you always have the psychological. And I think that's how sometimes people can win.
Mhm.
They can get you so rattled or out of your game, or, hey, I don't even want to play this person because they're so in my face all the time, and I don't play like that. And, it's
Welcome to
gamesmanship.
life, right?
Yeah, it's fun putting it all in one, right? It's behavior, it's human behavior, and you guys you're technically going for one prize, so you're always trying to get a little bit of an edge on your opponent, and a psychological edge, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, and that transcends any skill or anything. And some people are better at the psychological game, and their actual game might not be that strong, but
Yeah,
that's how they compensate,
sure.
right? And so, and you run into like a guy like Michael Jordan who's going to have both. He's not only going to crush you with his skill and his work ethic, he's going to crush you psychologically. And
Mm,
like, he was known as a real trash talker, and Kobe as well, but maybe not to the same level.
yeah.
Who knows, right? A lot of that stuff was not documented, and you hear it from players, right?
Mhm.
Other players were like, "Oh my gosh, Bird told me what he was going to do before he did it," and you're just like, "What the,"
Right.
And it's just, I think that's the fun part of sport, and those battles are a blast. And I love rivalries. I love playing in rival kind of games. I love playing the best teams. I think I played my best volleyball whenever I played against Karch Karai. because he's going to bring it, and you're like, you're playing cards, you got to bring it. And those are the players you want. The players that was I going to beat Karch every time? No. Did I think I could? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
it's all upstairs. It's like you might be the next person might be like, "Oh, you're crazy. That's not realistic." It's like, well, it's realistic for me. Like, I'm not going to get on the court unless I think I can win. I don't care who's over there. But, I played against Karch. I played against Phil. I know what their strengths and, Karch, he's so intense, you know what I mean? And he doesn't take games off. That's how he
Did
plays.
he jab? Was he ever under the net, let you
Not
know, get
much.
under your skin?
Not much. He was kind of a guy. He was very intense, but his play was superior.
Mm.
You look whenever I look at those top players, they're so good because you knew in a match they were only going to give you so many opportunities. And as those players got better, like you're playing a card, you're like playing Karch and Kent, you're like, oh, I got 2 or 3 times that I'm going to be able to score. And that's it.
Wow.
And if you don't score on those 2 or 3 times where, oh, there's the high line shot that you knew it was coming and you laid it out and dug it. If you don't convert, it's over. Like, if you don't convert on those few points, that's it, because the rest of their game's too solid.
Right.
The first tournament that I got into, I'll tell you a quick story. Me and Canyon Seaman played in the mid 90s, 90, I think it was winter of 90, going into like the 96 season. Karch and Kent played up at State Beach every day. Their practice partners didn't show up. So we stepped in and they're like, okay, you can be like practice dummies, right? We just played a match or a game. I remember we got like 11 points, right? It was like 15-11. We were like on top of the world, right? This is like my second year of playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we trained. They said, hey, you know what? When we come up here every week, we'll train with you guys. And so
Cool.
Canyon and I were so stoked, right?
Just by being near the court at the right time.
Yeah, we were
You had
training and doing something up there, and their other team didn't show,
I
so
tell
we
people
jumped
that all
in.
the time. I'm like, just hang out
Yeah,
near the courts you want to
yeah,
be on, and there'll be an opportunity at some
yeah,
point. Okay,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
And so every week that off season going or preseason going into the season, we played them. So first tournament of the year is Fort Myers, Florida. We used to do 4 Florida events in a row, and we're killing it. We get to the final. And of course, who do we end up playing? We play Karch and Kent in the final. We're smashing them, serving them off the court, bombing aces. Canyon has this bomb of a serve. We're up 13-8. Okay. It's a game to 15, right? This is the old school scoring. You got to serve.
Yeah, they're starting to.
We're
Typical team would
bombing.
start to let go at this point. They'd be like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, we're in trouble."
Bombing, but because we played them and we know we had to be aggressive. So, anyways, long story short, they go on to side out 28 consecutive times. They beat us 16-14, and we're furious but happy at the same time, right? First final, play cards, whatever. So excited, get home, wait for it, because Kent, you used to call me on Monday or Tuesday. Monday comes and goes, no phone call. Tuesday, no phone call. Never heard from him again. Okay. So, and then I'm sure they got new practice dummies, right? So I always tell that story that right place, right time, get in with the right people. If you're the best player on your court, go find another court, because you want to be playing with better players. It's going to pull your game up. But my point being is that you gave these guys an inch and they were like machines. They weren't going to give up. They had already given up their allotted quota, right? At
Right.
13-8. And then to go on to just freaking side out, like it wasn't.
28
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And we're bombing serves, but eventually you're like, all right, that's not working. And they chip away. But that was a cool story. It took me another year till I got our first win in 97. But that was pre-96. That was prior to them winning the gold. I think they won the gold that summer.
So they owe it to you in your practice sessions, basically.
But yeah, it's some of the great players just don't give you free points. They're going to make 1 or 2 errors here and there. If you're not ready to capitalize on it, good luck.
Sure. Dain, I really want to be respectful of your time. I do have just like 3 more questions. I think
Yeah, no
they
worries.
should be quick hitters. But number one, I always tell people a similar lesson, like show up to courts when you don't have the people, or you don't know how to get on better courts, or players won't play with you because you're at a certain level. I get messages all the time, how do I find players to practice with, players to play with? People won't let me play at a certain level. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to those players that are trying to upgrade their courts, the people they play against, and trying to upgrade their level at
Yeah.
the same time?
It's hard, like what you said, be around, like, I don't know what the protocols are now and when people practice, but I'm sure it's similar to it used to be. People have to understand, back in the day, you used to go down the beach, there was a feature court kind of on every beach, like a court
Mm,
1, and you would call winners, and people would play all day long, right? Those courts would get very exclusive, like the locals wouldn't allow a lot of people to get in, but then it kind of changed. Karch Kent kind of changed the game. They started bringing down 20 balls each. So you'd have 4 players bringing 20 balls down to the beach, and they'd
hmm,
have 80 balls, and they'd do reps and they'd do reps, and they'd play for 2.5 hours and go home. It used to be like you go to the beach early, you'd play winners, get up, you'd lose, you'd be back on the list to play again, and pros would be at the beach all day long. Right. You got to understand, remember back in the 90s, you go to the beach, you didn't have a phone for someone to reach you, right?
yeah.
So you'd hang out at the beach undisturbed. You'd be more present. You would be
Mm,
down there. It wasn't like, oh, hey, we're having a pool party over here, or we're going over there. It's just like you'd go to the beach, you'd hang out all day.
mm.
You were really cool if you had an answering machine that you that you could call like from a payphone or something and retrieve your messages. Okay. So you'd go to the beach and that's what you would do. But then
Yeah.
Karch and Kent changed the pro approach to training, like go down the beach from 8:30 to 11.
You
Or,
attribute that to them,
oh,
two and a
absolutely.
half hour
Oh,
practice
there's,
sessions
there's
that
no
is now
question.
like the standard.
Yes. Yeah. They
Because
changed that
Randy
game.
always like talks smack on all of us, saying like, "You guys don't know how to train. We used to be out there all day."
Well, yeah, because Randy, and he's absolutely right. And you
Mhm,
got battle tested too, right? And you'd be at play all day and you play a ton of games. Then Karch kind of brought in the no, you rep it more, right? That's
mm,
probably what they did in indoor. So we used to play a game with Karch and Ken all the time. Everyone would do 30. Like you would do 30 balls serving and your partner blocking, right? And the other part, like, so I would serve you and your partner 30 balls, then you would serve me and my partner 30 balls. Then my partner would now serve you guys 30 balls. Like,
mm,
and I remember we'd always try to get to about 24, which was about 80%. Okay. But that's a lot of reps.
yeah.
And I mean, you'd literally almost have 100 balls at the beach. That would be a common thing when you'd see those guys, and they would get it done 2.5 hours, leave, go work out, do whatever you do. But the hangout always kind of changed in the process of what people are doing now. Yeah, I would definitely attribute that to Karch and Kent, the way that kind of turned.
How does that player upgrade their game or get into a
Oh,
better
yeah.
player group?
Yeah, no, yeah, you
Or
gotta get beach volleyball is clicky, right?
mm,
People that move here from that aren't from California that are good players sometimes have difficulty getting games because you've seen the groups that won't let other people in just
mhm,
because it's clicky, like you surf at
'cause
the
you don't
wrong
know them.
way.
Yeah, you don't wanna waste your time and, like, see somebody shank a ball all day. Yeah.
Well, but even I'm saying even if they're good, groups won't let them play,
Mm.
right? You know what I'm talking about, where it's clicky. It's like going to surf at the wrong spot. It's like you're not getting any waves. I don't care if you're freaking the best guy out here, if you're Kelly Slater, like until you kind of get initiated in or we let you kind of in.
Or desperately need that 4th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you kind of, and like you said, if you're hanging out at the right time. But you just kinda gotta be in the environment and play, and eventually people let you in, and from that point, you wanna get on a court where the players are better than you and kinda keep working your way up. That's the way I see it.
But if
Uh
they're not in that neighborhood, I'm sure that you don't get every one of your girls from like California or from MB Sand or something. The people who are trying to get to that next level but won't be welcomed in the top court in Georgia. Let's just say that, like Atlanta, Georgia. How does that person, what method would you give them to say, this is how you get on the top court, stay on the top court? This is what you tell the top players or where you
You
show up?
gotta be patient. I mean, you gotta push, but be patient. Like, I grew up and I was born in Laguna Beach,
Mm,
raised in Laguna Beach. I had 2 older brothers that kinda went through the system. I remember locals would be like, "Oh, you're on court 2." And I was getting pretty good at a certain point, I thought, and it's like, "No, you're not there yet." You
mm,
know, like, there was this hierarchy to get to a certain level, and I was a local technically, you know?
yeah.
But, I mean, I was a teenager, young kid, but it's just the way the sport is kind of. You kind of have thick skin too, and just be like, and get if you get the system, if you come and you're all sensitive and you're like, hey, I got all this game and I'm just gonna jump on the top court and play, you know, you're probably gonna run into some interesting situations. But
Sure.
just be patient. I think the best thing is to train with pros, like to be like, if I were young coming up and I was like kind of a beach rat, I would be at the beach and be like, hey, can I help you guys train? Because no matter how good you are, there's always that in between time. It's just like, oh, you want to go in? You want to do a round? And now you just did 10 passing reps and whatever. And you're just kind of working your way through the system. But I don't know if that makes sense. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah, I like that. Be around the courts and ask, but when they say no, that's not your infinite no. That's
Right.
your no for that moment, for that minute, for that half hour,
Yeah.
and then throw it in there again.
Yeah, it's you just got like I said, just keep coming and keep working on the game, and someone's gonna eventually, like you said, someone's not gonna show up one day because we know how that works. And when I do clinic and coaching nowadays, I always tell everybody get 3 or 4 new numbers because it's just the way the sport is. You got a tournament tomorrow morning and you get the call at 7 at night. Hey, I'm sick or I can't play.
Mm.
And you better have a list of players like, you can pick up the phone, give it a shot. But
It's weird
that's
how
just
those
what,
social things of like just getting numbers, connect with people, like ask them for a phone number, their Facebook, their Instagram, whatever it is, and
yeah.
then just get that so you can make that social connection will maybe pave the way to a better playing situation, competitive situation.
Yeah, it's fun talking about volleyball and the kind of nuances behind the scenes, but let's just hope it keeps growing. And I think you mentioned something early on about me doing the volunteer coaching thing. A lot of people are like, "Oh, did you have a plan of being a head coach?" And and I really didn't at the time. I was Anna Collier, who is the former head coach. We've known each other 20 years. She was coaching Jenny Johnson and Annette Davis in the 2000 Olympics when I
Mm.
went to the 2000 games with Eric Fenoy Moana,
Oh,
and
I
she
didn't know
called.
Anna was their coach at that time.
Yeah, and so
Oh,
she
wow.
she yeah, she called me and she's like, "Hey, there's this college thing, you should get in." And so I came and I met Sarah Hughes and Kelly Clays and Allie Wheeler and all these players. This was 2015. They were in their sophomore year and they were so focused. And I said, this is something I could do. I didn't want to deal with just half-ass kind of players. I didn't know what to expect. And they were so professional and so on point. I was like, let me give this a shot. We ended up going 28-0 that year, winning the
Oh, gee.
AVCA championship. And then they just even got more fired up because 2016 was going to be the first NCAA collegiate championship. So
Mm.
we won that as well, the first one. And then they were like, we got to repeat. And so we ended up winning 3 consecutive years, 15, 16, 17.
Real.
18 was when UCLA won, and 19 I went and actually did the broadcast for the national championship. So I kind of moved on. And then Anna Collier stepped down in the summer of 2019 and the job was open and I got lucky and got the position. And know there was a ton of applicants, but I think it did help having those 4
But you
years.
were hanging out around the court. You're like
Right? Yeah,
you volunteered your time, and then
I
now
did.
you're at
I
the helm
did.
of the premier
And a lot of people say,
club.
like, "How did you volunteer?" Like, kinda like you were saying, like, y
Right,
and you
you're so
gotta.
busy, so successful, and you're just like, "Yeah, I'll take out 3 hours a day to
Yeah.
drive down, come
It was
back."
fun though, and there was
Okay,
it's kinda like follow what your passion is and
cool.
how I was enjoying it. It wasn't like it was work, even though I wasn't getting paid for it. I was having fun trying to give lessons to the next person and pass down any type of tip or trick or something, and make the youth better, kinda like what you're doing with the coaching. It's just fun to see that success. But I was very fortunate, to get the job. And then, you set your standards. My standards have always been very high. And the first year I was here was COVID, so we didn't have a year. So, like you said, the first active year, put together a really amazing team. I think the team that we had was the best team that's been assembled in collegiate beach volleyball. We just had the depth, the athletes, the culture, and they were just laser focused. And after winning the first year, they were like, we got to repeat this thing and win the second year. And it was an awesome run. And, college sports, it's constant turnover because they're freshmen and you blink an eye and they're seniors. But the standards are high at SC. The program was in great hands and Anna had gotten it to a certain point. So I was just like, I got to live up to this. And so we worked extremely hard to pull off what we did. And I got a great assistant coach or assistant coaches.
Oh, yeah.
Gustavo Hocha from Brazil and Laurel Weaver was our other assistant coach. And the three of us, I think, complemented each other really well. And like I said, we had some fantastic players that were hungry, really hungry. And I love the collegiate format, the best out of five.
Do you think that has a
team.
future in cities or countries that
I think it could
same
work.
format, like Davis Cup style?
I think it could work. I
Mm.
think there's room for some sort of hybrid more format because honestly, I think double elimination, straight bracket gets really old. It's cool and all, but the 5-team format where the 5th team is just as important as the first team.
That'd be fun to see internationally. That would be
Yeah,
really fun to see internationally.
it's intense, at least to have some specialty events.
Yeah.
Kinda like that, but I think the format that women's college beach volleyball has right now is the most fascinating and exciting. It's so fun to see the energy go from one court all the way to another court, and everybody runs over there.
As soon as it's over.
Yeah, and the national championships should come out to Huntington in 2025, I think. So finally, it'll be the first time out of Gulf Shores, who's done a tremendous job putting it on for all these years. When it was an AVCA championship, now almost 7 years into the NCAA championship, and it's fun to go to Gulf Shores if you haven't been. There's this bar called the Hangout that hosts the tournament right in front of facility, and it's a cool spot. It's a lot of fun, but it'll be interesting to see when it starts to move around.
Well, okay, I've got one last final question for you, and I've kept you to 23 minutes beyond your time that you allowed me. You've been around, interviewed, talked with champions.
Mhm.
Absolute champions of the sport. You are one, you've coached them, you've interviewed them, you've played against them. Is there something that you see in their eyes when you meet them, when you see them move, when you see them play that differentiates those people, the championship caliber people? What is it in their game that makes them different? Is it their person, their skill set, stats, their personality? How do you define that champion and how do you see them and separate them from the rest?
Now, what level? Are you talking like the collegiate level, of any level?
Let's go AVP.
Usually someone who's coachable is important. And when I say that, it's someone who's receptive to new instruction, someone who doesn't think that they have it all figured out. I've seen some of the best players like a Sarah Hughes who is extremely coachable, right? Like even though she was top of her class, maybe arguably the best player to play collegiate volleyball, she always wanted to learn. And like Tina Gradina also is the same way. Hey, how do I do this? Okay, she go do it. She come back, did I do it correctly? So that sense of I want to learn more, I want to absorb more. And I think if we all take that approach as coaches, like I could coach for 100 years, I still would have a bunch to learn, right? You want to have that open mind, and then you always want to have that kind of gratitude about you that, hey, I'm appreciative that this tour exists, that I have the ability to make this money, that I can walk and function and be an athlete. Like if you start coming from that, I guess, place of humility and gratitude and openness to learn, even if you have like the swag or the confidence, there's still kind of that you see that underlying like, hey, I'm still learning stuff. And when you see that kind of demeanor, it's almost like a demeanor that someone carries themselves with. You can
The
kind of tell,
open
hey,
demeanor or the
what's that?
or the learning demeanor, the open to coaching demeanor. Is that the demeanor you're talking about?
Yeah, open to coaching, the humility, the gratitude, kind of that appreciation that they have the tools That's when you kind of truly see greatness and the intensity when they get on the court. That intensity is everybody shows it a little differently, but there's different characteristics that players have, but you'll see it a lot off the court too, like the work ethic. If you're around someone off the court, like, do they show up on time? Do they lift? Do they lift because they want to get stronger? Is it a job, or are they actually enjoying it? That passion as
Mm.
well. So, to sum it up, the humility, the gratitude, the coachability, the passion to play. If you get players that like are sitting around and they're like, "What are we doing? Let's go play." Like,
Mhm.
those are the players you want, right? Not, "Oh gosh, I got to practice.
Right.
Go
Right.
practice." You know what I mean? Like, "Oh, here we go again, practice," rather than like, "Oh, what am I going to learn today? I'm going to
Yeah.
learn something today. I'm going to get a little bit better today." But not everybody has that.
Sure. Is
So
there a way to put that in to somebody, or is it just something that they have?
passion, I don't know, maybe at a very young age, but it's like I have a 4.5-year-old now, and I don't want to steer him anyway. I
Mhm.
want to introduce him as much as I can. And I think the passion's going to come by him figuring out what he loves to do rather than where dad thinks he should be, you
Mhm.
know. And I think that's where a lot of people err, like, oh, he's going to be as great as I was and even better in this sport. Like, if they go that way, good for, that's great. But at the same time, it's like, the passion, I think, kind of comes from experiences. Some people like hate athletics, right? They're like,
Right.
I'm not athletic. I don't touch a ball. They might have had a bad experience. They might have had the parent was like, catch the damn ball or something,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Or
you're
gym
like,
class is
whoa.
miserable because of 1 or 2 kids or, and
Yeah.
that shuts you off
Yeah,
permanently.
yeah. So I think it happens young. So you say, can you build it? I think you can repair it if it's been damaged. Like, but sometimes, I think as we get older, it gets a little harder to create that.
Mm.
But I think you can change, like, if someone thinks, oh, this is a bad experience I had and I don't like doing that sport, to, oh my gosh, I've just found this coach that gets me,
Ah.
that really is, he understands me. This is fun now.
Hmm.
But I think as we get older, that it's harder to do,
Yeah.
but
And
I
sometimes you
guess.
look less, or you're
Yeah,
less open to it. So
yeah,
that's interesting that you think that a coach can reignite or ignite something just because you enjoy being there in that moment because of that person. And I think that's in a lot of situations, endeavors, hobbies, workplaces, whatever.
yeah, and I think as coaches, we have that responsibility to create an environment that is engaging.
Mm,
So it doesn't have to always be fun, but you want them engaged.
yeah.
Always engaged. If they're engaged and they're open-eyed and trying to work on something, I think it's when the message or the instruction isn't engaging. And so, it's like having being in class when you're a kid. It's that teacher that was just talking like this all day long. You're just like, what am I doing here? Right. And
Sport
then,
law. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that
And then,
class.
and then the next year you're in a similar class, but the teacher's on fire and
Mm,
keeping everybody engaged. And you're like, oh, this is cool.
yeah.
Like, that's all I got.
Thanks, Dane. Appreciate the talk. Appreciate the time. Is there anything that you've got going on currently that you want people to follow, pay attention to, support? Any nonprofits, any place that people should follow you to keep track of things or your team or your companies or endeavors?
Yeah, no, I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm on the social media platforms just as Dain Blanton, easy to reach. All of our stuff with USC is at USC Athletics. Just, click on beach volleyball and you'll find everything about our team. And we also have clinics called Trojan Beach that we like to do, and we're putting that schedule together right now.
Are those for just juniors, juniors and adults?
Yeah, that's usually junior high and high school kids,
Okay.
and we do that at our facility here. We have 3 courts right on campus, which is
Awesome.
really cool. And yeah, it's fun getting ready to start to do the summer season of broadcasting for the AVP. And like you said, it's been so many years that I've been a part of the broadcast team, which is I'm so appreciative of. And it's a blast because you stay connected and keep your finger on the pulse of what's
Yeah.
going on out there, and it's fascinating to watch. But our women's side is in a good place because of the collegiate beach system.
Mhm.
I mean, you're getting training at a much younger age, trained correctly, and then they're going out to be pros. And so it's fun to watch some of the players that have gone through our program that are out there now representing
And
the
so
U.S.
many ready for the pro life
Yeah,
immediately, like
yeah.
on point, no adjustment period or anything.
Yeah. And so that's it, and to chat and talk about volleyball and always open to learn new things. And I'm real happy that I was able to spend some time.
Man, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the talk. Absolutely awesome. Guys, reach out. Go ahead. Follow Dain Blanton. He said get on him in social media and see what he's up to. And for sure, you guys will be seeing him on NBC, ESPN, national championships, everywhere. You can't be in beach volleyball and not find this man. So good getting to talk to you, man. I thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. You have a good afternoon. I'll wrap it up, but if you want to hang up and your thing, you're all set.
Okay. Sounds good.
Cool. Have a good one. Cool. Guys, that was cool. He's a voice. Dane Blanton's a voice that you get to hear constantly. He kind of represents the sound of summer for so many of us who are watching on TV or watching on different programs. And he's a champion himself. He's had the championship conversations. He's coaching current champions, world champions, and national and NCAA champions. So it's just really cool to see somebody who's doing it all in the sport and has done it all. I think that was just such a pleasure. And I'm grateful that we've had here live the largest audience that we've ever had. So thank you guys for watching. A few announcements from us. Our camps for the fall are live for booking. So we have 2 camps right now live. I think early bird pricing is still available for our second camp, which is in November in St. Petersburg, Florida. Our first camp sold 49 spots in 2 days. So we have 11 spots left for the first camp, which is October 30th. And if you're not on our email list or you're not there, remember that we just do a tiered system just to show our support for the people who support us. So our player members from our complete player program, where we coach players twice a week and we give them all of our courses and we guide them step by step through mastering the game. Those people, they get the first notice because we know how much of our stuff sells out now, which is wild. Thank you so much. Those people get first crack at it. And then we send it to our email list members. They get the next crack. And then finally, release it to social media and our website. Given that our October 30th camp last year was the hardest one to fill, this year is sold out all but 11 spots within a few days. I know that our Christmas camp, the December 26th, and our New Year's camp, January 1st, those are going to sell out super fast. I know right away. And we have a limited space at that resort. We only have a few, and we keep a really low coach to player ratio. So we make sure that everybody gets great coaching. If you're not on our email list or you're not on our member program, you're not a complete player program, then you might want to consider doing that as we release it, because we're releasing a new camp date every week. Then we do that tier system. So if you want to come to camp, hang out with us, hang out with a bunch of AEP players and amazing coaches, and meet new people, hang out with volleyball players from around the country and around the world, and literally get friends for life. That's what's been really cool to see, that after meeting new, real adult friends at these awesome, active, sporty vacations, people then get to go and travel to other states, other cities, and meet up with new volleyball players or volleyball players that they met at our camps. And then they get to either stay at their houses. We have a number of campers who have stayed at other campers' houses in different cities and stayed here. I had one of our campers actually stayed at my place here in Redondo Beach in California. And so you really, truly at these camps make friends for life. So invite you to those. Go to betteratbeach.com/camps. If you ever want to book us for a clinic in your hometown or, a facility, if there's a bar with 3 courts or a true beach volleyball facility, we just need a minimum of 12 people committed for the full day, because we go hardcore on our clinics. It is 7.5 hours of training, 9 hours total span, and we bring excellent coaches. It's not like a 2 or 3 hour thing. It is an intensive course, and it's physical and it's fun. So that's at betterbeach.com/clinics if you ever want one of those. Our complete player program is firing right now. Absolutely firing. We have a ton of members in there. Currently, everyone on our team is working on offense. This one is side out and win tournaments, the offensive masterclass. So we're working on everything from footwork, spacing, vision, decision making, strategy, the mental game, as well as arm swing mechanics and jump mechanics. And we are slowly moving into our ultimate defender program. So as we move through the summer, piece by piece, we go through each step of the game. And it's not just recorded courses. You can always sign up for just a recorded course and not get our coaching, and you will get a ton of great information on strategy and everything like that. So our recorded courses are the most packed piece of content that you can get. But if you want to sign up for our membership, then you also get access to our private Facebook group where you can post your videos, and ask your questions at any time. And within 24 hours, you get a coaching on it. So if you want us to look at your swinging, you want us to look at your passing, you want us to look at your setting, you just take the videos that we tell you to, post them on that group, and then we coach you and we show you how to do it right or how to do it better. Really invite you over to that, and you can find out all about that at betteratbeach.com. This was such a pleasure. I really want to thank you guys. I know I sent a big email out to everybody, but I really appreciate being able to create something where I can support other volleyball players, where we're giving people jobs, we're employing coaches and assistants and social media people who are doing just such tremendous work for us. And we're creating events that make people's lives happier, better, or enjoyable. We get physical, active vacations, which is my style, my flavor. I don't go on vacation to lay around. I go to play, compete, and meet new people who are like-minded. So if you're that type of person, come on to our camps. Invite you. It's going to be awesome. We'll hang out all week. And as always, thank you. And if you have any questions, reach out by social media, email, support@betteratbeach.com. So shoot us a message through a DM or an email, and to hear from you. Thank you guys so much. This is Mark Burek signing off. Guys, get better, and I'll see you on the sand.